Welcome back. Now, humans are able to influence community structure in many ways. You need to be able to analyze the ways in which humans influence communities. Humans are generally responsible for disturbances in an ecosystem which then trigger secondary succession. Human impact on an environment is also very often the reason why communities are prevented from reaching the final stages of succession. The most significant influences that humans have on communities occurs when they clear areas for building settlements. Continual disturbances of a community, for example, continual farming or mining in an area, will leave the natural community continually in the earliest stages of succession, when species richness is relatively low. Now, it is possible for human disturbance of the community to be so extensive that the community never returns to its original state. Archaeological remains suggest that hundreds of square kilometers were cleared and cultivated by the Mayan people at Tikal from AD 300 to 900. The civilization collapsed, and the natural forest community began to encroach on the cultivated area, and the cultivated area began to grow through the process of secondary succession. However, even today, the species diversity in the community is low. Even after 1,200 years, the site does not have the expected composition for a tropical forest in that area. Human settlements have always had an effect on the communities in which they have been built. In the past, humans settled in areas with very little consideration for the natural communities around them. In many cases, the surrounding natural communities were regarded as hostile and were destroyed. In more recent times, humans have become more aware of the role that natural communities play, and in some cases, more care has been exercised in developing human settlements. In many areas of the developed world, people are beginning to realize that sustainable development seeks to improve the human condition while conserving biodiversity. In some large cities, architects are designing green buildings with rooftop gardens to mirror the surrounding communities. Sometimes humans make decisions to intervene in communities, and the results have been surprising. Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming in the USA is a large protected game reserve famous for its hot geysers as well for its populations of bears, wolves, and bison. For many decades, humans practiced a very strict fire prevention policy. All fires were quickly extinguished. The result was that old trees continued to live and no patches of young trees grew. By 1988, about 1/3 of the Yellowstone trees were 250 to 300 years old. In 1988, a fierce and uncontrolled fire swept through Yellowstone, destroying much of the park. However, by the end of the following year, the burned areas of the park were largely covered with new vegetation and an increased biodiversity. Now, conservationists realized that their previous intervention in preventing fires and thus controlling the Yellowstone community had been an unwise policy. The area actually needed disturbance in order to bring about new growth. Now, in South Africa, as well as in other African countries, the elephant population has a very significant impact on other populations, particularly plant populations. If populations of elephants are kept in the game reserves and the elephants do not have sufficient space over which to roam, very often they wreak havoc on the plant populations in the community. The trees the elephants damage take a long time to recover. The trees that are killed by the elephants take a long time to be replaced by new trees. Conservationists were worried that elephants would go extinct due to poaching and hunting for their ivory. So the elephants were protected and hunting for ivory was banned. The elephant population grew and grew as a result. Now, elephant populations are so healthy in most areas where they are kept in game parks that another problem has emerged. The elephants have begun to damage the communities in which they live with serious consequences. South African conservationists are suggesting that elephant populations need to be culled in order to allow other populations in the community to recover. Culling means to humanely kill certain members of the population in order to keep the numbers of the population down. It is a means of controlling the population growth. Now, how do you feel about culling elephants to protect communities in which they live? Maybe this is something you could debate in your class. Well, that's it for today's lesson, Bafundi. I hope you have had a better understanding of what succession means. I'll see you next week at our next lesson.